off we go.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Kamaal Martin, running for mayor in the city of Lemon Grove, and I'm really excited to be here with all of you today. Brian is a key supporter and a really big part of our campaign. Even though we haven't known each other long, we're fast becoming really good pals. We have a lot of stuff in common, and even more as we start to discover the more we talk. And he's been helping me kind of run interference and take care of the back of the house stuff with these virtual forums. So thank you, Brian. I really appreciate it. Wouldn't be here without you. Also on the call with us today, we have a member of our policy team, a key member, Sarah. Say hi, Sarah.
Hello, everybody.
Sarah has done a lot of work with me over the past couple of weeks, months actually, just kind of fleshing out ideas about the environment, green space, and what are some things that we could or should be doing to begin to turn this city around. So those are some of the things that we'd like to share with you. But we don't want to talk at you the whole night. We want to have a conversation. We want to keep it as organic and informal as possible, especially with the size of the groups that we have right now. If it's not too large, I suppose we should take advantage of it and get as much input and feedback from everybody while you're here. While we are putting topics and themes to each of our sessions going forward, if you wanted to talk about something or ask a question that isn't green space, I'm not going to say like, no, we can't talk about that. I'll do my best to address it, but I'll also try and refer it to a session in the future if it is one of the topics. And if it isn't, then we'll find some time to address those things specifically. So just so we have an idea of who else is here, and I don't want to put everyone on the spot, but I won't mind putting some of you on the spot. If we could just do a quick round of kind of who's here, and since we're talking about green space and the environment, just one quick thing that green space or environmentalism means to you.
Should I go first?
Please do.
Well, Kamaal, anybody who does know me knows that I'm a huge environmentalist, and I'm a huge advocate. It's not just for animal rights, but the ecosystem, the balance that we've created thus far. It's tremendous where different people, where people can really interact with nature and really get back into it. One of the biggest things that I noticed about Lemon Grove is that the urban spread has not allowed us enough space to really branch out and create these green environments. With Kamaal's vision for vertical infrastructure, it's going to change everything. It's going to change everything that we understand about Lemon Grove, how we're going to create these green spaces, and the limited amount of environment that we have to work with. And not only that, but a series of other things that hopefully I'll be able to show you guys once I get this PowerPoint done. Kamaal, if you're willing to share yours. I'm trying to get it on Melissa's computer, which is the one I'm using right now. Mine's a bit vintage, but hopefully I'll get to give you an idea of what his visions are, what are the things that we can do to promote less greenhouse emissions, what we can do as a community to really get people more healthy, and also integrate all of the our natural world back into things. So the balance in our ecosystem, basically. And that's really my biggest vision for Lemon Grove. And I think that it's going to bring about tremendous change. One of the things I was talking to Kamaal about is what really suggesting what we call incubation trees. So basically it's building on the platform that's already in place right now, the trees that are going to be planted, that they're being suggested. We want to take those and we actually want to make them produce back for the environment. So fruit-bearing, seed-bearing trees, shrubs, things that are going to not just feed people, but the animals alike. And now we promote health, we promote balance and the integration of our natural habitats back into what we see as concrete structures all over the place. And that's my take on it. And I'm Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah. Who'd like to jump in next?
Well, I will. This is James or Jim. And
I'm not sure if you wanted me to go. Am I James?
James or Jim. Rock, paper, scissors for it.
I apologize. I was seeing logged in by it's Jim, and so I didn't know if it was me. Kamaal, I'm really liking what I'm seeing and hearing. Your expertise, your knowledge, beyond Lemon Grove, even state situations that affect Lemon Grove. But what I'm also interested in is your moral compass. I always want to know, what's the bottom line with a man? How does he make, a man or woman, how do they make their basic decisions? And, so I hope I'm making myself clear. Where's your faith at?
That's a great question.
Thanks, Jim.
Where to begin? To do that question justice, let's hold that one. I'm going to make a note, and we'll try and slog through the rest of the people who are with us on the call, and then I'll take that question as the first one we jump to, and we'll also make a notation of the additional questions that other folks on the call have. Does that work for you, Jim?
That's fair.
Thank you.
Other Jim, James.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Yeah, just call me Jim, please, actually. I think that the whole concept of green is just, key to our survival, right? And that's what we need to focus on, and whatever we do, every decision, every policy decision that we make really needs to be central to that concept of environmental sustenance. And I think that as any city, we have our ups and downs, but I think that we really can promote something that really makes sense and that everyone is willing to see as a positive, then I think that's how we do this. Otherwise, I'm fearful that we will turn people off and not be very clear about the message. That's it.
Thanks, James. Other Jim?
Let's see. Seth and Alicia, or Seth is currently unmuted. You want to go ahead? Seth, it's nice to see you again.
Yeah, sure thing. It's good to see everyone here. As far as green spaces and open spaces in the community, coming from a background of architectural design and city planning, what that says to me is, well, first of all, green spaces help concentration. With being in the built environment so much is detrimental to people being able to concentrate, and it's actually has negative effects on their health as far as mental capacity and general well-being of life. And it gives people a destination. It gives people someplace to walk to, which helps in our overall health and keeping active. Active being one of the main drivers of longevity in life and mental spryness. Also, more from the design perspective, it reduces the urban heat island effect. So we actually have more heat in cities because of the built environment we have and the colors of our buildings attracting heat, specifically asphalt and pavement. That's why huge swaths of parking lots are horrible for our communities and are better placed underneath more reflective materials. So it can reduce our urban heat island. It's better for our exercise, better for our general health, better for concentration. People need to be connected with the environment. That's how we've been, and we've designed cities so that we've disconnected ourselves so much that we're beginning to see the negative effects. And so I'd like to see that be implemented within our city.
Thank you, Seth. Couldn't agree with you more.
MKB, hi, welcome. You're unmuted now. Thank you for letting me know that.
Yeah, thanks. My name is Mary Kate. I just like to be anonymous because then you can't track me as well. So the green space idea, I'm all a part of it. My background is early childhood education, so my mind immediately goes to, you want to get the community together, you make it about kids, then you make parents care. I personally don't have kids, nor do I want them, but I do love them, and I did make it my job and my passion. So that's where my mind immediately goes. But if you want to get kids, you want to get the community, you want to get these green spaces going, we need sidewalks, because I can't get anywhere without fearing for my life and the life of my dogs, because they are, not great at listening all the time. And so that's like kids, right? So that's where my mind goes to. I'm all about the environment. I'm a gardener. I did AmeriCorps. I know all kinds of stuff. But if you want to get started, you got to get people there, and you got to get them there safely.
That's great.
Well said, Mary Kate.
Thanks.
Alicia, you're back with us. Do you want to say something, or anybody else want to introduce themselves?
Yeah, we'll go next. So I have my wife Jessica and myself Eric here, my son Joaquin right here, and so we moved to Lemon Grove a year ago. We had friends that lived here and just like the housing market in the area, and we've been able to kind of see some of the different issues going on and appreciate that Kamaal and his team are really considering some of the things we've talked a lot about. And definitely sidewalks, I'll agree, are a huge issue. I was even bringing it up at city council meetings and kind of getting pushed aside by some of our own Lemon Grove city employees. So it was a little disheartening, and it definitely, I'm happy to hear that we're not alone in that, because we love to take walks, and we love to take walks with our son. He's 4 months old. We don't want to be dangerous, be in dangerous situations. So I appreciate that. But yeah, that's us. Just wanted to say hi.
Thanks for joining us, Jessica, Joaquin, Eric. Welcome to the town, and welcome aboard to the movement here in Lemon Grove, turning the city around. Glad you're here.
Walking is an all important thing for parents of a 4-month-old, man. I remember.
Yeah.
Alicia, welcome back. I'm going to unmute you. I'd love to hear from you again. Hi.
Hi, how are you guys?
Good.
I'm joined here by a group of other family members that live in the neighborhood. So I've got my mom and my sister. So I guess I'll let my sister speak.
Well,
Angela.
Just thinking about, environmental justice is racial justice. And when you think about the fact that in our communities, we have to advocate for green space is just another symbol of systemic racism that's present in our communities. With the history of redlining, therefore less trees in our neighborhoods, therefore more incidents of asthma and respiratory illnesses, which is now our communities are suffering more than others with COVID. It just all adds up and compounds. So, and thinking about green spaces and what it means is like really being able to not only provide space and opportunity for people to enjoy, the outdoors and have access to green space, but also what it means for our physical, psychological, and just basics needs for safety as our communities work to repair and try to, get better given the amount of forces that are against us often. So it's exciting to have an initiative or to have a community come together to think about how do you take green space and make it more than just open space for people to enjoy, but a symbol of liberation and freedom for many of us.
All right. And to add to that, just coming from my experience with what green space, what the capabilities and abilities of what green space does to our communities, coming from working for the district, the Little Italy Association, and seeing what the urban landscape and seeing how adding green space and adding trees to all those 42 square blocks and seeing them grow over time and seeing how it just enhances the neighborhood, also property values, which a lot of people will probably be interested in. And then also when you just look around, when you go around and visit other communities that have, a lot of green space, you just see what it does to the community and the environment. So I'm all for it.
And lastly, I lived in the city of LA and worked for the mayor of LA for 8 years. And I just noticed the increase in property values when you plant trees, but also I think we need to look at the opportunity of undergrounding the telephone lines, because we have all these telephone lines that are taking up valuable public space that could actually be transformed into sidewalks. And if we coordinate and do street trees, sidewalks, I mean, we're talking our property values could go up $300,000 to $400,000 if we invest in a 20-year plan where we do even oaks or sycamores and have street themed streets. And you can look at models that you can go to Palm Springs. They don't do hardscape.
Palm Springs, when you go through there, they have, you know, DG. We don't have to invest in, you know, cement or, you know, any kind of hardscape stuff. We can just start out with just DG, you know, decomposed granite with a bunch of trees on the side. The other thing too is the cars on the street. We've got to have some kind of plan to invest in parking lots so that people can, we have multi-families here. Look, we have 4 generations here. I've got my grandkids. We have a lot of cars, you know. Hopefully we'll get to a point where we can take public transportation, which Lemon Grove is perfect. But at some point, we don't need cars parked on the front lawns. We don't need cars stacked up all over. You know, if we had parking lots that we can invest in close by, you know, at each, you know, every couple of blocks, we could park those extra cars there and make these streets wider and prettier. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents. And I love Lemon Grove. I've lived here. I want to bring back farm animals. I'm really upset that we can't have horses and goats. We can have chickens because California law stepped in, but come on, the ex-mayor got rid of that. And she could have horses, really? So anyway, I mean, you know, llamas down the street, they have them illegally. It's like, we shouldn't be, you know, underground with our farm animals. Hello. Anyway, we have big lots, so take care, everybody.
All right. Sorry, guys.
No.
I love it. I love it.
This that household and that family is about business. I love everything coming out of there. And I don't know if everyone caught it. Maybe she was being modest, but Alicia was also really responsible, like she said, for the work and development in Little Italy. And she's been gracious enough to support and help the campaign to work with, helping develop some of our placemaking efforts in how we brand our city, how we the aesthetics behind our city. So in addition to kind of having an operations background, she's also a teacher. She's also an artist. So I think one of the other things that's really cool about getting to interact with folks on the call is there's so much capacity that we have here locally in kind of our civic infrastructure that I think it's absolutely essential that we leverage. You know, there are experts and expertise that we may not have represented amongst Lemon Grove residents. But if you got people in the town who already have experience and have done the work, engage them, pull them into the process, and like throw the doors wide open and decentralize decision-making to the extent possible and widen the tent. So thank you for everything that y'all are doing. And if there's anyone else who absolutely has to or would really want to introduce themselves, I know some people may not, and again, I want to keep you as comfortable as possible. Go ahead and jump in now. We'll spend 2-3 more minutes, and then we'll kind of shift gears into some of the slides that we have.
All right, we've got Melissa. Yeah, Melissa, hi.
Hi. So I am here to support my very good friend who put together you can see her here, Sarah. We've been friends since the 2nd grade, and I'm really excited for you guys to hear what she has to say, because I've been able to be here and witness like everything that she's put into this proposed project, actually multiple projects. And this is really cool for me too, because I feel like I'm an activist at heart, and just seeing how Lemon Grove, like just this little forum right here, is bringing together people who are knowledgeable, who care, and who want to see change. This is very, very neat for me to sit in and be a part of, even if I'm only clicking on the slides. So thank you guys for welcoming me.
Glad you're here, best friend.
I know, real quick, Seth wanted to jump in with a comment before we jump in. And then I don't know who is on the iPhone, but if you would like to introduce yourself, you can go ahead and raise your hand or just shoot me a little chat and we can do that. But Seth, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. I've changed that because I think the group is small enough we can manage that.
All right, thank you. I just want to say I've been hearing a lot about sidewalks, and I recently spoke with Noah Albee, who was our community development manager. And so I sit on our planning commission for the city, and many times through projects that we've had proposed, I'm continuously asking, I know they're giving us a sidewalk for this new project. It should be a wider sidewalk. This is the bare minimum. We need more than this. This is on Broadway. 6 foot is not enough. And I keep pushing these kind of things. And the answer I'm starting to get back, which is based on city code, is our code doesn't support my trying to get that. That's something that we need to change in our code. I can ask for it, and I've been successful in some cases, but not always. And so really that's a chance that needs to be made on the city, on the code level, that I think can be accomplished, and pretty easily, actually. So definitely, if we can get that, it's an easy change that can be made. As far as redevelopments, a very good example is Lancaster Boulevard in Lancaster, California. The intersection of Lancaster Boulevard and Sierra Highway. I grew up there, went to high school in that area. That was, I believe, a 5-lane road that they turned into a pedestrian strip with 1 lane in each direction. And that has the community in that area thriving with the businesses that are there. It's a very nice redevelopment. So check that out on Google Maps with your street view if you get the chance. It's a very nice place.
Definitely.
Real quick, I just wanted to come in fast with my own experience, and I did love the Lancaster. We were driving to Sacramento to go home, which is where I'm from, over the holidays, and we drove through Lancaster, taking the back roads up around. I was shocked. Last time I was in Lancaster was in college years ago, and it was awful. It's beautiful. But the thing that really struck me about Greenspace was the last time I visited Boise for my grandma's funeral. My cousins lived there. My aunt and uncle lived there. And growing up, to visit Boise was always tedious because Idaho is Idaho, and I don't really belong there or fit in there. But last time we were in Boise, it is magnificent. Their downtown has connected to their green belt. Their green belt is this beautiful surrounding the city area that drives right by the Idaho Shakespeare Festival, one of the biggest, best Shakespeare festivals in America. It goes through this part of the river. It has made their city so surrounded by beauty, which infected the city with beauty. I was amazed. I hadn't seen it since I was a kid. So that's all I wanted to say, and I'm going to mute myself now and shut up.
So I just want to throw a couple of quick things out there as Sarah's getting ready to kind of jump into her presentation to set a little bit more context about kind of who I am, some of the vision that I have, and hoping that that matches up with you folks as well. So one, on a very basic level, I believe that climate change is absolutely real, right? And a significant threat to not just the quality of life, but like life on the planet itself. And I don't want to be alarmist about it and say, you know, in 10 years that everything's going to dry up and wither away into a giant fireball. But I think we'd be kidding ourselves if we haven't noticed that as Southern Californians specifically, we're like the American canary in the coal mine to a certain extent. I mean, we've seen, what, 1 million acres of wildfires just this year alone. Climate change may not have started those wildfires directly, but I think we can argue that climate change like put them on base, right? Like it got those things going. We're dealing with, you know, if folks remember the drought that we had been dealing with and the political connection to drought, because anytime you define something, you start to get elected officials and bureaucracies involved, you have to give something a name. So just because someone said the drought started or stopped doesn't necessarily mean that it's gone. But I think we all observe these phenomenon around us every day in the climate, in the weather, and specifically in a place like Lemon Grove, where the tagline is the best climate on earth. Feels a little warmer than usual sometimes. So what else can we do, again, to reduce heat islands, create tree canopies, the connection between green space, concentration of people, economic development, but also the health and well-being of the community. Every place I go, sidewalks is a huge issue, and one would think that it shouldn't be, that we should be beyond that as a city, but we're not. And depending on where you live in Lemon Grove, there literally is no sidewalk. And if you have mobility issues, if you're pushing a stroller, if you're in a wheelchair, how are you supposed to leave your house? Couple that with like the pitch black darkness that we have in Lemon Grove on certain streets because there aren't regular streetlights. There are lots of things that have to happen. And realistically, we aren't going to be able to get to every street right away, but at least if we can create a centralized green, safe location, we can get people out of their homes and bring them outside into that space. And it's another great way to begin to bring folks from outside Lemon Grove into the community as well. That's why I'm such a huge fan of the Connect Main Street project. And I think the beginning of that project as, you know, a linear park to use already existing city-owned property and right-of-ways, the transformation that would happen along that corridor would be absolutely amazing. Edible forests, urban foraging, rain gardens, free-flowing water. Let's bring pollinators and birds and all these things back to Lemon Grove. Another piece that I don't know if folks realize, Choyas Creek actually starts in Lemon Grove. One of the tributaries starts in Lemon Grove. Lemon Grove, La Mesa, and this whole area. And Choyas Creek is said to be San Diego County's most neglected watershed. I think we have an opportunity to do some really, really fantastic creek restoration. I had a great chat with Eric where he was talking about a property off San Miguel and Federal and doing like some type of outdoor education space and kind of parking that up. I think these are all the things we need to start looking at. And I absolutely believe that they're worthy of our tax dollars and they're worthy of us finding additional funds outside of the city to dedicate to these types of projects. And the extent to which we're able to position Lemon Grove as a key part of a broader strategy of economic development and addressing environmental racism and systemic inequality all throughout San Diego County, that's how we unlock grant dollars, that's how we unlock foundation money, that's how we unlock federal dollars. I would like to see the Choyas Creek restoration happen, and I don't know if it could happen in 10 years, it might take 20, but for someone to be able to walk on a protected path from Lemon Grove all the way to the bay in Barrio Logan in National City, because that creek runs the entire way. And one of the things that I've been talking about with Alicia and some other folks is the idea of like the greater Southeastern San Diego. You know, Lemon Grove has been a city since the late 70s, and you know, College Grove and Canto, those were all parts of Lemon Grove at one time, and we ceded that land to the city. I'm not saying we're going to get it back because I don't think that's going to happen, but the extent to which we can work with these other municipalities on shared projects, I think those are exactly the type of public-private partnerships that we should be front-loading to help us kind of stimulate our economic growth and development. So with that, Sarah, are you ready to jump?
I sure am. Yes, so I'm going to start to share that screen. And again, just a small sample of what honestly is the resolve for a lot of the questions that you guys have and concerns and interests. And I'm really excited about what we've been able to collaborate with. So can everyone see the screen?
It is live in the meeting, yes.
Okay, good. So we're gonna go to, and again, this is all out of order, and I'm gonna address a lot of the concerns that you guys had or things that you guys have addressed that we need to highlight on or really give our attention. So give me 1 second. I'm just gonna open up here. Are we in? Sorry, give me 1 second.
While Sarah's bringing this up, let me share a few other quick kind of interesting tidbits as we think about green space, air quality, soil quality, water quality. San Diego County has the 6th worst air quality in the entire nation. That shouldn't be like a badge or a mark of distinction. But I think in Lemon Grove, we have an opportunity to address some of that in the green space, in other measures that can absorb these toxic compounds. Our school district has one of the highest percentages of obese children within it in the entire county. And why is that? Well, it could be, you know, one of the 20 some odd fast food restaurants that line the entire main drag of our town. It could also be the lack of green space, sidewalks, and parks where kids can't get out of their homes and, you know, recreate and play and do these types of things. So we really have a responsibility again, and the connection between the city government and the school district, I think, is really, really vital, because whether you have kids, want kids or not, you know, parents and families are a big part of any community, and the extent to which a community develops with the safety of young people and families in mind, it really benefits all of us. Like I said, whether you're a parent or not, because everybody loves parks, everybody loves green space and recreation. So these are the types of things we need to focus on and that we need to see. Sarah, you ready? There we go.
You should be able to just scroll through that, I'm pretty sure, if you just use your mouse wheel. Because it's like a PDF. Looks like you open a PDF, so.
And I don't know if Sarah's having some audio difficulties right now.
Yeah, I would just try to scroll that, and then that shouldn't be a problem.
There we go. She's back.
Okay, I'm back. I'm sorry, guys. We're gonna go to the first page. Now, I actually grew up in Bonita. For those of you who don't know, I don't belong to Lemon Grove at all. Mr. Martin gave me a leadership opportunity, and I was not one to turn it down at all. I grew up in Bonita. I live in Sierra Mesa, but I believe in the collective importance of all of our ecosystem, and everything that benefits one benefits the rest. So I just wanted to pull up a difference, and so that you guys can see basically what we're trying to get at. We do need more green space. However, we're devoid of it in Lemon Grove because of the fact that we cannot expand anymore. We cannot expand outwards. All of the lots are reserved for either industrial or personal use, and it leaves us with very little to build on to be able to create these green spaces, which are important for maintaining the nature and the animals. And give me 1 second, I'm gonna go to the next one. Okay, there we go. So as an environmentalist and an animal rights activist, it is very important for me to really look at nature and see the ways that we can integrate and help them become a part of our lives and fulfill their roles as equals in our environment. And what we do by feeding these animals, by making sure that they're taken care of, is that we control the insect population. Owls and also a lot of the predatory birds control a rodent population. They also control insects in the form of disease prevention, because we also have, of course, mosquitoes and ticks and things like that. And they also help with pollination. So one of the things that I know that you guys have proposed is that we're going to plant trees, and I'm all for this. However, they cannot be trees that are not generating a return to the environment, to all of us, nature and human beings alike. Because one of the things most recently that has been brought to my attention as an animal rights issue is the fact that a lot of our homeless are eating these animals, or eating these pigeons, these birds, these seagulls, these raccoons, is a mean to being able to stay alert, and that contributes to the spread of disease. It contributes to also an animal injustice, which obviously I'm not okay with. But oops, sorry guys, I'm a little ahead of myself, but there we go. What else we're going to be doing by creating these green spaces is we're going to create a thriving reptile and amphibian population. And what this resolves, again, is still the insect population, because things like obviously toads are going to control these newts. They do relieve our need for pesticides. And there are a number of things that we can plan and we can grow in order to promote the amphibian integration into our societies that are also taking care of the rodent population. Snakes eat a lot of our excess rodents that are, in our homes, that are actually kind of just hungry. And so these are the things, these are the ways that I have, and that we're both of us trying to implement in that regard. And another thing that I've noticed is our rodent problem. And our rodent problem is something that we created ourselves. Now, can everyone see these? I have no idea what you guys can see. A list of the rodents that I pulled up from the Lemon Grove Rodent Control website are listed here. And the resolve of that is also here, because again, remember, we created this issue. And what we have to do to get them out of businesses and out of our homes is to feed them. They are hungry. It's very important because they are a part of the perpetual balance that creates our entire ecosystem, that helps us thrive, that helps us grow. And so again, I understand that they're ugly, that they're not pretty. Raccoons and possums and rats are very unfavorable when they're in our yards. But then again, there are ways to being able to still be friendly to them and still keep them as part of our community without necessarily having to eschew them completely. And
just a quick heads up. I know you're talking about, there we go. We were looking at the Bonita and Lemon Grove, or at least I was looking at the Lemon Grove and Bonita slide up until that.
I'm going to assume that that's the same thing. So these are the slides that are, can you see these now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
So these are the things that I've been proposing. Again, what are the things that eat mosquitoes? What are the things that are taking care of the things that we are spending excess money, a lot of tax dollars in trying to control? These are all of the things that we can do by allowing nature and our ecosystem to be able to thrive. It's going to take care of itself. It's in a constant perpetual balance within itself. And we have to be able to celebrate and reverence these things. It's very important. Not only that, but despite the fact that I talk about insects, there are very many beneficial insects, pollinators, insects that eat other pesky insects. These are things that we have to take care of. Not only that, but they play a tremendous role in breaking down all of our waste. Waste management is a tremendous issue for everybody. And there are actually a lot of aspects of nature that take care of these issues that we're having without us necessarily looking at them as pests. So being able to get them, again, involved in our infrastructure, in our ecosystem. Rain gardens, of course, are going to produce a lot of streaming flows, which was somebody had addressed. I think it was I want to say it was Eric, I don't know, that had mentioned that. And these flowing streams are significant. They're very vital because providing a source of hydration for the land is monumental in helping everybody because of what it brings, because of what it nourishes, not just humans, but animals alike. So of course I've added a few slides. This is actually something in my community, the top right corner. This is about a block from my house, and Sarah Mesa has created a wonderful rain garden that provides for plenty of wildlife, which is, again, very important. Free-flowing waters. Now, somebody mentioned something about free-flowing waters, and we need to not look at it as something that is just for us. Hold on, I'm just looking at something. I think I might have sent the wrong PowerPoint because I'm missing some. I certainly am. So I might give you guys, put you guys on hold for a minute while I get the other PowerPoint. But these free-flowing waters are very important, not just for wildlife, but people alike, our homeless, of course. We are a desert. A lot of people forget that we're a desert and that we have to help. We have to help every living thing, and a lot of them need our help. One of the things that I'm very familiar with is this idea that we are dominant to these creatures and these animals that are all around us. But dominance doesn't necessarily mean that we have to exploit them. It's we need to help them. We have a responsibility to them, and they protect us. They take care of us. So free-flowing waters and creating an environment where they're able to access these free-flowing waters, where there's a lever where if a squirrel wanted to get a drink, that he's able to do that. These things repay the entire environment 100-fold over. And of course, there's this aspect, the recycled water, minimizing the waste that we have, minimizing our plastic use by creating water bottle refills throughout our parks. And this is something that we can find all over the world, free water, water fountains, things like that. They're everywhere, and they're monumentally important to maintaining not just the ecosystem, but nourishing all of the animals that are really animals and human beings alike, and the homeless that are looking for these free and natural resources. And water should be free. Water should be available readily to everyone. And of course, there's the drought tolerant. Again, there's the push that we are a desert. We are a desert. So we have to look at drought tolerant fruit, vegetation, low maintenance trees that are going to produce. So all I'm really looking at, all that Kamaal and I have really looked at doing is to not look at the, there's already an idea to kind of plant more trees, but what we're going to do is create trees that generate, that produce nourishment, that produce nutrients for everybody in the community. One thing that I mentioned just a little bit ago was that the homeless, they're eating very questionable things just to be able to stay alive by planting these trees. And again, remember, you guys live in Lemon Grove. I haven't seen a grove of lemons at all. And we have to be able to bring these things in, date palms, oranges, dragon fruit, jujubes. These are all cactuses, these prickly pears. These are things that instead of planting these shade trees, we can actually plant things that are producing back to the environment. This gets people back out, really looking at the different children, families being able to go, and it's not just fruits, it's nuts, you know, picking pine cones, picking, no, not pine cones, I'm sorry, but like, what are they called? Walnuts, walnuts or chestnuts, you know, for Christmas. These are traditions that outside of the US I practice with my family, but I don't see being here. And again, I uploaded the wrong PowerPoint. I apologize to you guys. It's really not showing me the new things that I've done. Kamaal, is there a way that you can share the one that I shared with you, or should I just, can you guys give me a timeout just so that I can get to the main points of your?
I don't know that I have anything other than this one either, but let's just go with what we have. The next couple of slides are great.
Okay, so some of them, like I said, I haven't worked on too many, but this was part of the original Lemon Grove design. All I've done in these images is to take the new trees that are going to be planted and replace them with trees that are producing for everybody. This is significantly important, and you can see that all of our most eco-friendly, our most progressive communities throughout the world are doing this. They are making sure that we are providing, or that we are creating trees that are composting, that are giving back to us and to the environment, the wildlife, etc. So as of now, let's just go with this while I try to upload or share screen the new one. Are there
if I can throw something in there, Sarah, right before you go to the next slide, just to give people some additional context so you know what you're looking at. These are some of the renderings from the Connect Main Street project. And if you can visualize it, you see the cars on the far right-hand side. That's Lemon Grove Avenue heading south towards Encanto. You see the trolley there, you see a restored creek, and you begin to see that linear park, the bike path. Ooh, did we just lose the screen? We just lost your screen, Sarah. And we lost the audio. While she's bringing that back, we were looking at a bike path, the DG trail that Alicia's mom was talking about, a replanted slope, and residences on the backside of that on, you know, a number of different streets, like in that Sound Altos community. So what this opportunity represents on a number of fronts, the increase in property values, the obvious, you know, health and environmental benefits, in addition to like the aesthetic benefits, and just knowing that we have a green space that's safe, it's walkable, it's lit, and we can get out and recreate, can be a game changer for Lemon Grove. And I think one of the like first large dominoes that we need to knock down that starts the progression of, you know, continued investment, continued interest in our community. And these are the types of projects that are going to be able to get nonprofit and foundation money and other partners to support the type of work that we're trying to do. Keep going, Sarah.
Okay, yes, and the other thing, and I don't have it up here, we're working on that, just give me 1 second. I uploaded the wrong one, but somebody had mentioned something about the sidewalks and how important those were. And I know that finding funding and finding support for creating, I mean, it's a huge project from what I've seen, from what you've shown me. I mean, it's a monumental task, and also finding the funding for it is impossible. And that's one of the things I'm going to touch into is the community enrollment and individual enrollment that is going to really accelerate the success of the campaign that Kamaal is talking about. One of the things that we look at is I mean, we look at things very traditionally. We look at sidewalks as being, we have to pour concrete, we have to do these things. I mean, we're in 2020, things are changing significantly. Rubber sidewalks with reflective paints is a big deal. Kamaal, you were talking about the fact that it's pitch black in the middle of the night. I know, so I'm Egyptian. I've lived there, and predominantly because of the heat, people are awake at night. People are more active between the hours of sunset and 12 a.m. than they are during the day, because they are a desert community. But one of the things that they do is they create these reflective sidewalks, not just reflective sidewalks, but sidewalks that glow naturally with the moonlight, where you can create a space where not only do you have, instead of these hard concrete sidewalks, like you were saying, you create rubber sidewalks, family-friendly sidewalks, and that are very cost-effective. And there are so many companies here in San Diego that are willing and able to donate these things. So one of the other things is finding the funding. We don't have to find the funding if we're able to reach out on a small scale, or maybe a small amount of funding, to reach out to these companies that are doing these huge movements and offer a cross promotion. Say they donate or in kind a sidewalk just for a small sector of the community. You commemorate them. You commemorate them with a placard or with a bench, with the company name, with the individual's name who sponsored this. So now we have community integration. Now we have volunteers. Now we have so many people volunteering to make this town a better place. And you create incentives. You can create incentives for them to do these things by cross promoting. And I know it's something very small to think a placard for somebody who donated a small sidewalk or whatever, but it's huge when you think about the fact that that placard is going to remain in that space for in an extended amount of time. Now we create value. We could even create demand for it by saying things like, hey, you know what? We want to create, one of the things I'm going to get into in a second is the vertical landscaping, the green roofs, the green bridges that we want to create. But these things can be created by citizens themselves, by companies themselves, by incentivizing them to contribute to the community, by enabling them to have a long-lasting advertisement, which is their donation to the city. And now we have our need to beg, or our need to plead, or our need to petition for more money. Instead, we're having people come forward in a significant way to give back to their environment. So again, after I've said this, let me just put everybody on hold so I can start getting the new PowerPoint on. So give me just a second.
So while Sarah's doing that,
Go ahead.
I was going to address Jim's question from a little bit earlier. He started off with a question kind of about, like, well, who are you, Kamaal? Like, you say some interesting stuff, but like, what are you about, and kind of what's your moral compass? That's a really important question, and something I had to kind of sit with for a minute. And then he also asked, kind of what's your faith? So for anyone who is trying to get involved in community service, electoral politics, especially in a small town, I think it's really important that people have a clear grasp of kind of who they are as an individual, in kind of the circumstances and context that kind of shaped them. So just to give you a little bit of background, and hopefully this will address your question, Jim, in a not too roundabout of a fashion. So while I have lived in Lemon Grove for about 13 years or so, I've been in San Diego County since 2005. I was born back east. I grew up in Hawaii, essentially. My parents decided, New York was kind of getting rotten in the 70s and 80s, and they wanted to give me a different chance to have a different kind of life. And I'm forever thankful for the opportunity to grow up in a place like Hawaii. All of my schooling and stuff was there, elementary, middle school, high school. I was raised in a Muslim household. I don't know what that means to you, but the idea of, being rooted and grounded in some type of tradition, whatever that is, I think is really important. And, I think faith is a continuous process, and there's always an evolution that happens there. And it's still a huge part of my life. I went to school in the Northwest for a while. I went to the University of Oregon. I was trying to be a football player, but that didn't work out well. And my football career was over before it began. Ended up just kind of being a student and finishing. But I spent the first 2 years of college goofing off, and the last 2 years working really hard. So on paper, I was still a pretty average or a crummy student. And I was really fortunate, literally like the last class I had taken as a graduating senior, this international studies class with a professor, like a teacher in the archetypal sense of teacher, who saw something in me that I didn't really see in myself at the time, and was like, "What are you doing with your life, kid?" And I was like, "I don't know, maybe I'll go to Europe and backpack or something." He's like, "Nah, bro, it's not for you. Why don't you stay here, study with me? Don't worry about your bad grades. We'll get you in, and you'll be one of my teaching assistants." And I was like, "Word?" He was like, "Yeah." And just like that, it kind of took on a life of its own. That got me kind of on a different path. And funny enough, it actually took me overseas, where I was in Egypt for a while doing my field work, studying Arabic. And I wrote my thesis about, the title was A Green Jihad, a revival of eco-theology, and whether or not it was possible to use religious texts and doctrine, specifically in that area, to promote and support environmental justice, sustainability, and these other pieces. That was in the early 2000s. My wife at the time was pregnant with our first kid. I was trying to do everything I could to get her to have the baby in Egypt. She was like, "Nah, dude, I'm coming back to America where my mom is at." And I wasn't going to get in the way of that piece. And she was from San Diego. And that's kind of how we ended up here. And I've been here since. So it's been kind of an interesting path and road. But the environmental piece has been a big part of my life for a long time. I think it's tremendously important. And, beyond kind of the golden rule piece of, treating people how you want to be treated, I think that the American experiment that we're all participating in is not over. And it's up to us to create the type of life, society, and institutions that we want to see. And all politics is local, and change starts at home. It's really easy to get frustrated and overwhelmed by the enormity and scope of many of the problems that we're facing nationally, specifically in a moment like right now. And if we focus on, ourselves, our families, our communities, that's what the country and society is, right? And it starts at home, essentially. It starts with us. And I'm really passionate about doing the things that I can to play a role in leaving it better than I found it, whatever that means. I'm a father. I have a kid who's an 8th grader at the Language Academy. My oldest is a sophomore at San Diego High. So we've been doing quarantine school. I'm just like everybody else. I'm pretty regular. I just happen to have worked in government and politics for a while and have some skill sets that I feel like could be beneficial. And I feel like we deserve better in this town. And there's a huge upside to living out here. And I want to play a part in making it the best that I can. So I hope that took care of that question, Jim. I didn't want to forget about you because that was a really important one. But also one that it's a heck of a question to start off the meeting with, right? Thank you.
Does anyone have right now another question they'd like to throw out while we're kind of getting ready here? I had a thought about the slides we were just looking at, but if anybody else has a question, go ahead and jump in.
Go ahead.
Hi, they're being involved in LA and some of their revitalization for some of the 2000 bond. I worked for state parks for 10 years, and I actually was their statewide planner. So I did what's called the LA Urban Initiative, and we bought, the cornfields and some of the urban parks, and the state parks was moving into, they felt that there was a need to really reach out to urban areas that they were underrepresenting. Not everybody could make it to the Sequoias or Big Basin that just burnt down, and etc. But I think the most important thing, if you guys want to look up a really pioneer in some of this urban greenery stuff, unfortunately he died in March, but he was a fantastic advocate. His name was Robert Garcia, and he started the City Project in LA. And he, was one of the first public interests. He was an attorney that actually, was a public interest attorney for a long years. But I think that we're missing, the link between SDG&E. I'll give you an example. I grew up in Normal Heights. I went to Hoover High, graduated in 75. It was a transitioning area at that time now, and then it went through its things. But SDG&E had been billing the city of San Diego residents for years for underground utility, and what they found is there was an audit 30 years of that they weren't spending any money to underground the power lines. And what happened is they said, you know what, you have $2 billion that you have not used, that you've created, a slush fund basically to, to advocate what your obligations were for the taxpayers who were paying, I think it was $350 a month for something like 50 years. So that fund was unbelievable. So if you go down El Cajon Boulevard, or you go to Normal Heights, or you go to University City, you'll see a drastic change once they underground those power lines. And, Lemon Grove could easily pressure, during the slideshow presentation, she talked about, let's get corporations, let's get nonprofits, let's get volunteers. We could pressure SDG&E, who has utility lines that are just bizarre. I'm looking out my window right now, and it looks like a spaghetti factory, up in the air. And they have these power lines that are just like in the middle of the potential sidewalk that could go down Buena Vista, because we live in Buena Vista, was a direct feed to the trolley line, and pressured SDG&E to underground those power lines on. Just start with Buena Vista, or just start with Lemon Grove Boulevard, or even let's look at Broadway, guys. There's still power lines all the way down. Take those suckers out and coordinate so that you have, fiber optic, we're gonna do, big band underground cable, so that our infrastructure is projected in the long term. But why can't SDG&E pay for that? And as a note, why don't we shoot for, you could strong arm them that, you know what, we might want to create our own community power plant. We might want to get off the grid and have our own, Lemon Grove power plant. If you don't get your act together and help us underground some of this stuff, then we're going to go for a solar, plant on the 125, which Caltrans the right of way. That's the other thing that I disagree with. We have the SDG power line right away. We have the 125 power right away that Caltrans owns hundreds of acres that accompany 125 and the 94 and et cetera. We could create, because we're a nonprofit and we're a city, memorandums of understanding to make sure that we, take back that land for the people and do a 100-year lease or whatever. And there's so many opportunities of free land. We don't have to look beyond. We're not power locked. We aren't subjected to, everything's bought up in Lemon Grove. It's not. There's a lot of right-of-way space that the public owns. Might be state of California, might be the school district, might be, SDG&E, who, eminent domain, the city eminent domain, or the state of California eminent domain. We have rail lines. You know how much feet you have to have on each side of the rail line that we could look at to plant trees all the way down when the trolley goes down? Those are all free spaces. So maybe there needs to be some kind of an assessment. I'd be happy to do it, where you look at where all the community right-of-way spaces that are owned by public entities, Lemon Grove, state of California, school district. We can go down the line. Community college district may have bought some of the land up here. We don't know. They're projected out when they do their land projections for 20 and 50 years. We may have Cuyamaca that owns a little parcel over, off of Hamashaw. We don't know. Has anybody done an assessment and look at that? So maybe the community college district might want to put a JC annex in 50 years, but maybe we could do a 20-year agreement with them where we do a community garden. I don't know. Free land, let's go for it. So I don't know, that's what, I'm really down with these power lines. I want to get rid of the power lines and put
I like
DG in there, some trees.
And just so you know, I'm in those, the Celsius building over by the Lemon, so Buena Vista is not far from me. And
yeah.
I got to see the Lemon Grove realignment project kind of unfold real time. And the biggest public works project in Lemon Grove history, I think says a lot about who we are, but it was a cluster in a lot of ways. And you know, you have the city on one side, you have MTS on another side, you have Caltrans on another side, you have SDG&E, and this pole belongs to us. Well, this pole doesn't belong to us. And there were plans for undergrounding of a number of utilities that haven't happened, and the extent to which we saw streets getting paved over, people telling us that the undergrounding is still happening. It's like, why are you spending money to re-asphalt and like
happens all the time,
and then you're going to jackhammer it up and then make another inconvenience and then underground the utility line? So
I think they're in cahoots sometimes, because it's like, you wonder if there's like some graph going on with SD&G, so then you can't come back and go, well, wait a minute, you now you have to put the underground. Oh, we just paved this beautiful street. Yeah, it makes you wonder. Yeah, and can you go back from that? Yeah, a good example. Can you go back from the blight of those apartments that are on the most bizarre? I mean, talk about as a planner, I freak out every time I have to go over by the Honda dealership and those apartments and that, you know, the K-rail, and you're just like, what are you talking about? I can't even make a right-hand turn, a left-hand turn. I'm surprised there isn't a major lawsuit. And the trolley lights are still blinking, the lights aren't still blinking. I mean, it's just like, who planned this? Can we go back from that? Yeah, we can. Can we go back from the paving over and not being able to put underground utility? Yeah, we have to be diligent. We have to like replan that. Maybe we have to relook at that whole right away over on Lemon Grove Avenue from the 94. You know, maybe we have to hold Caltrans accountable. Maybe we have to hold, you know, the person who built that apartment that got that permit, who was able to escape all that. Really? I mean, come on. And, you know, and how does the Honda dealership get that big parking lot that's right there in the middle of, I don't know what it is. That could be a green space, even though who would want to play with their kids on, you know, the side of the freeway, but I'm sorry, it could be lemon trees.
No.
Hello, welcome
to charge people to park there and make money.
Welcome to Lemon Grove. Here's the lemon tree. That could be our lemon tree grove. I don't know, but it's just like you drive around and you're thinking, what were they thinking? It's horrible, and it's dangerous sometimes. You know, the streets, you're like, you know, you can't drive down any of the streets because, you know, sidewalks, and the poor kids have their backpacks, and forget trash day on Friday or Tuesday when, you know, and people have their trash cans out and the kids have to go in the middle of the street. It's nuts. So anyway.
All right, you're cut off.
Don't get me started. My daughter.
And just to let people know, and I want to be respectful of time, we go until about 7:30 usually. We had a couple more questions pop up in the chat. And let me also say that I think every decision the city has made, every plan the city has made warrants like assessment, right? Like just because something has happened doesn't mean we have to live with every folly and error. And some things may be harder to unwind, but some things absolutely can be changed. And I'll throw one more kind of random Lemon Grove factoid out there at you. Everybody familiar with Civic Center Park? Recently renamed, I think, Treganza Heritage Park. That site was going to be the site of a new Lemon Grove City Hall before the library got built or as that project was happening. And there are literally millions of dollars of fiber optic cable underneath that grass that are never going to be used because there had been a grant and some other kind of strange stuff had happened. And essentially the leaders at the time decided, well, we don't have the manpower to staff this other facility and to do these other pieces. So they ended up giving back free money almost $10 million to get this project done. There were people in the community who were like, look, like if the issue is staffing, we'll get the Rotary to do it. We'll get the Lions to help. We'll get the, Solar Optimist to help. We'll figure it out, build the thing that we want, and like, let's make the facility better. But we weren't able to get it done. So I think everything, like nothing is beyond questioning and trying to figure out if we can tighten things up and do better. Brian, let's get to those other few questions.
Yes. So the first one, I got one from Seth, another one from Jim. First, Jim. But Seth's question is, I had mentioned the Greenbelt because we had talked a little bit about Greenbelts in our original conversation in our announcement. How would you plan to implement a Greenbelt strategy? I'll add to this, the strategy that Sarah was talking about with lining some of that place with trees. How would you kind of implement that strategy, I think, with the city?
Great question. And I love the idea and the concept of a green belt. I think one part is, from my perspective, the Connect Main Street project and a continuation of that and kind of extending it and wrapping it around along different corridors. Another way that it could happen potentially is just south of the 94 along North Street. There's not a huge amount of space, but there is like an easement type of thing that kind of skips a few parcels and could go a really long way towards soaking up some of that, car exhaust coming off the 94, but also giving people something beautiful and green and lush to see as they're driving down the 94, kind of passing Lemon Grove, and the opportunity to use North Street as, it's not a primary thoroughfare when you think about Broadway that runs parallel to it. Perhaps that could be a great place to get people out of their homes, walking again, and to use that green space and kind of connect along the back way. I'm open to ideas that other people have or places that might be better suited to it. One of the things that I love about being part of a team is that you don't have to have all the answers. It's your job to sometimes you're getting rebounds, sometimes you're hitting bounce passes. I want to throw an alley-oop to somebody and let them slam dunk the green belt. Is there something that you see or think, Seth, in your experience as an architect and on the planning commission that might be more well-suited to that use?
Sorry about that. I was typing up another question. Refresh me on what you had just said.
First, I was saying an extension of Connect Main Street. I think that could be like the genesis of the green belt, but it could also be extended potentially along North Street, just south of the 94, and some of that space that's between the freeway and the fencing in the areas that don't currently have apartments built along them. I think it'd be a great visual for people driving along the 94, and it could also be a great way for people to have a path, a walk path or a bike path, so they can get down into the main shopping area of Lemon Grove without having to walk along Broadway necessarily. But if there's something else that you see as a planner and architect, where else are you thinking that we could do something like that?
So I agree with the green space along 94 because yes, it would make for a more pleasant drive on the 94, and it gives you a better mode of pedestrian transit that is not going through the busiest streets we have. I think that the Main Street Promenade is acting as its own open space. It's not a green open space because it's a promenade, but it's acting as its own open space. And the traditional sense of green belt is a mechanism to restrict cities from sprawling out of control, from taking over land at the borders and then just keep getting larger and larger by gross area. And it forces what a city would do is they would take the edge of their city and say, this area is dedicated to, say, as I've thought about this, we could dedicate it to planting orchards. We could dedicate it to agriculture. We could dedicate it to urban farming. In that area, you locate your single family and duplex housing, so light residential in that area with the urban agriculture and commercial agriculture, if someone so chooses, along with a major park system. And we put that along the west and south edge of the city. Because what it does is when someone drives in from San Diego, you've got your house, your community is right there. And when they drive through it, what you're doing is you're immediately going from, this is an urban area, to I've suddenly got this orchard on either side of me and there's some residents scattered in here and there's a park. There's an immediate abrupt change from city of San Diego to Lemon Grove, and it makes a sense of place. It says, I've arrived somewhere, because suddenly there is green right here, and you have to ask yourself why. So it lets people know that they've arrived in our city. It gives us a place for agriculture. It allows us to maintain some of our single family duplex housing, because I think we do need to densify, but we also need to make sure that we have space for everyone. Some people will want to live in single families and duplexes. So we need to make sure that that's still accounted for. And we can do that in this less densified area with this green space. And sort of one of the jokes for working in the field of architecture is we like to name things after what we tore down to put it there. So like Lemon Grove, there used to be lemon groves here. There used to be. There are not anymore. And there's no reason that should be the case. There's no reason that we can't have a green belted lemon groves bordering our city and placed throughout in our parks.
I've got one more. These are a bit out of order, and Jim and Brian, if you give me just a second, I've got two kind of political questions, but I've got one more fruit question real quick before it. So Jim, if you don't mind 1 second, I just want to make sure we kind of get topics wrapped up, and then we can move on to the two political questions that we have. Jessica had asked earlier, how would the fruit trees, if we do plant fruit trees, which I think is a brilliant idea, how do we make sure that that fruit and food is distributed evenly among the people whose taxes pay for the trees and growers? How do we distribute that?
That's a great question. And to be honest, I hadn't even got to the point of distribution for the fruit trees yet. I think my mind was still at maintenance and like care at that level. And I think there's like a workforce development component that should be attached to the urban forestry component of some of this placemaking and like regenerative work. And perhaps that workforce development component is also responsible for some type of harvesting or gleaning. I don't know if every Lemon Grove resident like needs to get their quota of oranges or like coconuts or dates or whatever that is. But I think within reason, people should be able to go and take whatever the heck they want. And part of what we do is take care of stuff and make sure it's available for people to use.
May I chime in?
Please.
Thank you. So a lot of the green space that we're creating and these fruit trees that we're creating aren't necessarily for humans, although it is for our homeless population. It is for a lot of our wildlife that we have eschewed from our community that we have. I mean, you have to understand that they play a vital role in our infrastructure, in our in everything that is eco-us. They play a vital role. And I think I try to present that as a PowerPoint. And I remember as a young girl in the Bonita area, I moved here from Egypt when I was about 9 years old, 10 years old maybe. And I remember wanting to create sort of like a bond with these animals and try to find a way. And I don't know why I wanted to do this. Of course, children, innately, we try to do this. But there is a reason that we have an affinity for them. There is a reason that we have a love for them. And it's not this creating vegetation throughout the city isn't necessarily just for humans. We have to think outside of ourselves. We have to think about the homeless people who are going to benefit, who are going to tremendously benefit, not just in their mental states. Because again, remember, they're eating these wild animals, and we have to take things into account like COVID-19 that is happening because of carnivorous diets and things that we're not supposed to be eating. We are going to really rehabilitate the entire city as a whole, because a lot of these people are not looking for jobs. They're not looking to benefit themselves or to improve their own selves, because they're not nourished, because they are not just undernourished, but spreading disease by doing things that are not very practical. And these things are all going to resolve that. And one of the things that Mr. Martin has proposed to me is that vertical infrastructure that you're right, we do have space to work with, but not significant enough to make a difference. And this is why we have to really look for a way to make it greener. And it's the topic of everything that we're dealing with today. And if I can share just where, and I'm sorry that I didn't have this right a second ago, I had the wrong one, but can everyone see, I guess, where we left off?
Yeah, I've got 3 questions I got to get to. Can we maybe come back to this? I've got 3 people who've been waiting to chat.
Yes. Let's go.
Thank you. So this comes up a lot in conversation, I've noticed on social media when we're talking about this stuff, and I think it's an interesting question to answer. So I've got these 2 political questions and one, I think, a last question about infrastructure. So do you plan on using, or do you have aspirational political ambitions beyond being the mayor of Lemon Grove? It's something. It's a question I see all the time.
Full stop. That's the question.
That's the question. Yeah. Do you have aspirations beyond, or using? Let me read it exactly. What are all of your talents, and do you have aspirations to use Lemon Grove as a springboard to bigger political ambitions? That's the real question.
All of your talents.
Yes.
I couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, so that's not a talent. And the only person who likes my dancing is me, so that's not a talent either. Yeah, I do have aspirations beyond serving Lemon Grove, and let me tell you why. One, I don't support the idea of a city of any size having city council members and mayors be here for like 16 years, 20 years. I'd like to see term limits in Lemon Grove. I think 3-4-year terms is enough to like do what you said you were going to do, to put some things in motion, and then let's keep rejuvenating and bringing in fresh blood, new vision, new ideas. That's something that I would absolutely love to see. For the things that we're trying to get done in Lemon Grove, it's going to take time. 4 years is going to blow by, and 8 years will be here before you know it. And honestly, I think the scale of some of the projects we're trying to do when we're talking about green space, we're talking about green belts, we're talking about parks, we're talking about housing, we're talking about addressing homelessness. At minimum, I think these are 2-term problems. And while I do have aspirations beyond, I'd like to deal with the work in front of us first, and like not put the cart before that horse and try and be running for an office that may not ever happen. But I do really think that the opportunity to do something transformational in Lemon Grove, where we can position Lemon Grove as literally a model of growth and development throughout the county, country, and nation, sky's the limit. And who knows what that'll unlock for the rest of us. To go back to the first part of the question, like what are your other talents and the things you're involved in that are connected? That's how I'm kind of interpreting that. So I work with an education advocacy organization. I have a financial services practice, board chair of a nonprofit organization. We do a lot of work around urban agriculture, health and wellness. We're currently building a grocery store / food hall incubator space and senior housing project on Market Street in like the Mount Hope area of San Diego, so not far from us. Organization's called Project New Village. The project is called the Good Food District. So we're trying to activate an entire district, again, using food, health, and wellness as a catalyst for economic development and kind of that micro enterprise component of food systems work in that space. But also like the workforce development component around the food system, I think is really important. One of the things that COVID has taught me, and I think other people as well, the importance of people who work in the food system. Just to get lettuce, strawberries, and the things we take for granted on our plate, there are hundreds of thousands of people who are underpaid, overworked, and in really rough conditions out there. It is not easy to be a farm worker at all. And there are a lot of other intersections and complexities with these issues. But again, the relationship between health, food, green space is something that I'm really passionate about. So those are things that are important to me. I made my home in Lemon Grove. I'm proud of this place. I'm proud to be from here. And as someone who's worked in politics and have seen people use an office as a springboard to get to the next place, well, I don't think anybody should be faulted for having ambition, but I'd like to see people at least make an honest effort to do the work that they said they were going to do when they got elected before they see greener pastures somewhere else. I'm dedicated to being a part of seeing these things happen. And just straight up, to get it done, it's going to take all of us kind of digging our heels in and toughing it out. And that's what I'm excited to be a part of. So I hope that answers that part.
This next one's tough, man. Do we need a mayor and why? Brian Page asked this question, and I think it's, we're a small town. It's a good question, and I think, it's worth talking about.
It's a fair question. Let me answer it this way. I think the mayor of Lemon Grove should be a full-time professional position. I think to do it properly and to get the representation that people expect and deserve, it should be paid a salary commensurate with their commitment and experience. We're asking people to work a full-time job. Here's like an AmeriCorps stipend. And then when we don't like the results, part of us wonder why. Being an elected official is a lifestyle. It's a commitment and you're always on. You always have to be representing the city. You always have to be thinking about the city. But we also understand because they aren't paid a living wage that they have to have other employment in other places. I think local representation is really important. I don't think that if we were to disincorporate, that life would get better in Lemon Grove. I think it would get decidedly worse if we relied on the county to solve all of our problems. If we think people don't listen to us now, wait till you have to go to a board of supervisors meeting to talk about a sidewalk. Like, just think about that. If people in Lemon Grove are giving you a hard time about answers about a sidewalk, go down to Pacific Highway and see if people listen to you then. And with our kind of neighbor community of Spring Valley, I think there's a lot of promise and potential in Spring Valley. There are some parts of Spring Valley, though, that are a little rough. And I think that's reflective of county representation and why local officials are really vital. I'll also say, in a city like Lemon Grove, the city manager is really the most important position, right? City manager is the highest paid person in the city by far. Our current city manager doesn't live in Lemon Grove, which isn't necessarily a problem, but she lives in San Marcos. I'm not in love with that. I think that for someone who's responsible for making high-level decisions about how the city develops, how they attract business, how they help guide and shepherd kind of the aesthetics of our community, that the closer you can live to the town where you're making these decisions, the more skin you have in the game, and I think that's really important. But the mayor and the council appoint the city manager. So if you don't like what the city manager is doing, if residents don't like the decisions that are being made, it's in our interest to bring in leaders who can help bring in the right person with the right perspective for that position. So the mayor is just a cog in a wheel, but it's an important cog because you're able to shape and craft the agenda of city business. And essentially, if something isn't being addressed in Lemon Grove, it's because the mayor has decided not to agendize it or not to bring it to the people. So yes, I think the mayor's important. I think Lemon Grove would do even worse without one. And just to kind of bring it back to the disincorporation idea, I'm 1000% against the idea of disincorporation. And I think it has all types of unintended and unforeseen consequences. But I understand people's frustration when you go to meetings and you don't get answers, when you send emails and phone calls and you don't get responded to, when you feel like you've kind of been disrespected, disregarded, and ignored, you're like, well, screw it. Like, we'll just go back to the county. But I think it's coming from a place of desperation and frustration, and I don't believe is the answer. So I hope that helped.
I'm going to just go through the topics for the next 4 weeks and then we've got one more question, and we're right up against the end of our time here. And I'm right now praying that I set the time to go till 8 o'clock, not 7:30, because I don't know if Zoom auto ends, but we'll see. And if it does, we'll figure that out. On the 17th, we've got economic development. On the 1st of October, we're going to talk about homelessness. The 15th of October, we're going to talk about law enforcement. And then on the 29th, right before we get to the election, we're going to talk about placemaking. And I'll post these up with kind of as we're moving forward. I'll make sure everybody knows what we're talking about. The next question, last question we have from Seth. We have the fiber optic cable under the Civic Center Park. Why don't we provide free Wi-Fi hotspots at that location? For that matter, would you be open to advocating for free Wi-Fi hotspots in our parks? And how might we find funding for those? And then, yeah.
Somebody on the call may know better than I the age and utility of the fiber optic cable that's currently under that park. I've heard from some people, and I haven't been able to verify whether or not it's been there so long that it's now like the old stuff and not the good new stuff that we need. So I think that's one part on that piece of the question. To the question around Wi-Fi in parks, absolutely yes. And I've actually been having some conversations with folks at Qualcomm about this already. I think something like that with a Qualcomm, with an AT&T, with a Cox Cable, with a Verizon, some of these already existing telecom providers who are already making a boatload of money off of the subscription services that many of us have, I think we should find a way to get in their pockets and provide some type of free Wi-Fi in city public parks. Another workaround maybe that I've seen, because again, anything we can do to get people into public parks and using that space, even if they've got a phone glued to their hand, is great, is mobile Wi-Fi and like these Wi-Fi stations in vans and buses and things like that. Perhaps there's an opportunity to do something there or some other potentially city-sponsored piece that does that. There's definitely gonna be like the component of competition that kind of comes into it regarding telecommunications and the way the telecom providers have kind of divvied up San Diego County, where depending on where you live, you have to get Cox, or depending on where you live, you can only get, what's that other one? Time Warner or whoever it is. I think we have AT&T and Cox out here in Lemon Grove. I think those are some of the first places we should go, much like Alicia's mom was sharing regarding SDG&E. Let's go get as many resources as we possibly can from these entities that we're already giving money to. We'll let them tell a good story about how they're reinvesting into the community. We kind of know better. But if we can find some additional broader benefit for us all, that's exactly the type of partnership that we should be trying to create. Was there another part to that I missed?
How would you, well, no, I think that was it. That was the how you would fund it part. That was it. All right, y'all, we are running up against the end at 7:32. Again, let me just go over them real quick. We're gonna look at economic development next, homelessness, law enforcement, placemaking. Please spread the word. Let your folks know if they're interested and they want to hear about it, who I think is an amazing candidate for mayor. Please join us, and you know, find me on Facebook and oh God, next door too. But still, we're there, right? I know you're all there, maybe privately and silently, but you're there. It's the internet's greatest shit show, I'll say. All right, it is, but it's lovely. Y'all, this was great. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, everybody. Really value your input, your feedback, your time. Hope to see you all again soon. And before we go, in case folks don't have it, I'm gonna throw my contact info in the chat so people can reach out.
And your number's on your website too, right?
Yes, sir, it is.
Great. I'll blow
I'm also going to throw another piece in here for anyone who's interested and hasn't went to go eat dinner yet. The nonprofit organization that, like I said, I'm a board member, I'm not staff. I've been involved with this organization for about a decade, and I've been the board chair for the past 2 years. And just to give you some context again, you know, we're working on a $20 million construction project that, you know, we've had our hands in from the ground up. And, you know, we're a small nonprofit. We've grown a lot over the past 10 years. The entire general fund of Lemon Grove is not $20 million. So when I'm out there raising money as a board member, one of the things that I fully plan on doing is leveraging those same relationships to bring these dollars back to our community and to integrate Lemon Grove into a larger vision for the future that I think is going to be really, really important. So let me get this last one up here. And then I know I'm the only thing standing between Brian and dinner. So let's not stay too long.
It's just a hug to my little munchkin.
Yeah, check out the other website for some of our nonprofit work. And yeah, have a good night, folks.
We're going to post this up. I'll post the recording later, and we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night, y'all.